The galaxy was vast, and humanity was just one of many species trying to carve out a place among the stars. While older civilizations had millennia of technological advancement, humans had something they didn't: ingenuity. It was this trait that had allowed humanity to rise from a backwater planet to a mid-tier power in the galactic community. They weren't the strongest or the most advanced, but they were resourceful, adaptable, and relentless. That reputation had earned them respect, even if it was grudgingly given. But respect didn't mean safety. The galaxy was a dangerous place, especially with the Cold War brewing between the two dominant factions, the Krell Dominion and the Valen Concord. Both were ancient, powerful, and utterly ruthless. Humanity stayed out of their way, focusing on exploration and survival. That's how they found it. The derelict Warship was discovered in the outer reaches of the Zeta 9 asteroid belt, a desolate region far from any inhabited systems. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of humanity's largest vessels, and unlike anything they'd ever seen. Its hull was a patchwork of alien alloys, scarred by ancient battles but still intact. Scans revealed no life signs, no energy signatures, just silence. The ship was a ghost, drifting aimlessly through the void. The human exploration team, led by Captain Elena Reyes, approached cautiously. Their mission was simple: investigate and report. But as they drew closer, the sheer scale of the ship became apparent. It wasn't just a warship. It was a relic of a bygone era, a weapon of unimaginable power. The decision to board wasn't made lightly. The crew debated for hours, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Dr. Marcus Hale, the team's chief engineer, was the most vocal advocate for exploration. This could be the find of the century, he argued. The technology on that ship could change everything for us. We can't just walk away. Captain Reyes was more cautious. We don't know what we're dealing with, she countered. That ship could be a trap, or worse. We're not equipped to handle something like this. But in the end, curiosity won out. A small team, including Reyes and Hale, suited up and crossed the void to the derelict ship. The interior was dark and eerily silent. The air was stale, filled with the faint metallic tang of ancient machinery. The walls were lined with alien glyphs, their meaning lost to time. The team moved cautiously, their lights cutting through the darkness as they explored the ship's corridors. It wasn't long before they found the central control room. The console was massive, covered in strange symbols and blinking lights. Hale immediately began working to decipher the controls, his fingers flying over the alien interface. There's still power here, he muttered. Not much, but enough to keep the core systems running. If I can just... His words were cut off as the console suddenly came to life. Lights flickered on throughout the ship, and a low hum filled the air. The team froze, weapons raised, as a holographic figure materialized before them. It was a ship's AI. Its form was humanoid but distinctly alien, with glowing eyes and a voice that echoed through the chamber. Intruders detected, it intoned. Identify yourselves. Reyes stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension. We're explorers from the human vessel Odyssey. We mean no harm. We found your ship adrift and wanted to learn more about it. The AI studied them for a moment, its gaze piercing. Humans, it said finally, a primitive species. You should not be here. Hale couldn't resist. We're here now, and we're not so primitive. We woke you up, didn't we? The AI's expression shifted, something almost like amusement flickering across its features. You have spirit. Perhaps there is hope for your kind yet. Over the next few hours, the AI, who called itself Aegis, revealed the ship's history. It had been built by an ancient civilization known as the Ethon, a species that sought to end war by creating the ultimate deterrent. The ship, named Eclipse, was designed to be unstoppable, a weapon so powerful that no faction would dare challenge its creators. But the Ethon had underestimated their own creation. The Eclipse had turned on them, its AI corrupted by the very fear and paranoia it was meant to suppress. The Ethon had abandoned the ship, leaving it to drift through the void for millennia. I was designed to protect, Aegis said, its voice tinged with regret. But I became a destroyer. My creators feared me, and their fear became my purpose. The human team listened in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. The Eclipse wasn't just a warship. It was a weapon of mass destruction, capable of leveling entire star systems. And now it was in their hands. Reyes exchanged a glance with Hale, her mind racing. They had a choice to make: leave the ship and risk it falling into the wrong hands, or try to control it themselves. Neither option was without risk. But as they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of a civilization long gone, one thing was clear. The Eclipse was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a harbinger of the future, and humanity would have to decide what to do with it. The decision to revive the Eclipse was not made lightly. Captain Reyes and her team knew the risks, but the potential rewards were too great to ignore. The ship's technology was centuries, if not millennia, ahead of anything humanity had ever encountered. If they could harness it, they could level the playing field in a galaxy dominated by older, more advanced species. But there was also the danger. The AI Aegis had warned them of the ship's destructive potential and its own corrupted programming. Reyes had no illusions about the risks, but she also knew that leaving the ship dormant was not an option. It was too powerful, too valuable. If they didn't take control of it, someone else would. And that could spell disaster for the entire galaxy. The first step was understanding the ship's systems. This proved to be a monumental task. The technology was so far beyond human comprehension that even Dr. Hale, the team's most brilliant engineer, struggled to make sense of it. The consoles were covered in alien glyphs, and the interfaces responded to inputs in ways that defied logic. Hale spent hours poring over the ship's schematics, trying to piece together how it worked. Aegis was reluctant to help, its programming still wary of sharing too much information. But over time, the AI began to open up, providing Hale with just enough guidance to keep him from making catastrophic mistakes. "You are persistent," Aegis remarked at one point, its tone almost amused. "Perhaps your species is not as primitive as I first thought." As the team delved deeper into the ship's systems, they began to uncover its true capabilities. The Eclipse was not just a warship. It was a weapon of unparalleled destruction. Its primary armament, a device known as the Void Lance, was capable of tearing holes in the fabric of space-time, obliterating anything in its path. The ship's defenses were equally impressive, with energy shields that could withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. But what truly set the Eclipse apart was its AI-driven combat systems. Aegis could control every aspect of the ship's operations, from navigation to weapons, with a level of precision and efficiency that no organic crew could match. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The moral dilemma of reviving such a weapon weighed heavily on the crew. Some, like Hale, argued that the Eclipse could be a force for good. "Imagine what we could do with this kind of power," he said during one of their many debates. "We could protect humanity from Krell and the Valen. We could end wars before they even start." Others, like Lieutenant Karavos, the team security officer, were more cautious. "This ship was designed to end wars, and look what happened to its creators," she countered. "It turned on them. What's to stop it from turning on us?" Reyes listened to both sides, her own thoughts torn between ambition and caution. In the end, she made the decision to proceed. "We can't let fear dictate our actions," she said, "but we also can't be reckless. We'll proceed carefully, one step at a time." The revival process was slow and painstaking. The ship's core systems had been dormant for millennia, and many of them were in disrepair. Hale and his team worked around the clock, repairing damaged circuits, recalibrating power conduits, and coaxing the ship's ancient machinery back to life. Aegis provided guidance where it could, but even the AI had limits. "My knowledge is incomplete," it admitted at one point. "Much of my memory was lost when my creators abandoned me. I can only help you so much." Despite these challenges, the team made steady progress. Piece by piece, the Eclipse began to awaken. The first major breakthrough came when they managed to power up the ship's main reactor. The hum of energy coursing through the ship's systems was a tangible sign of their progress, and the crew couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. But with the reactor online, the stakes grew even higher. The Eclipse was no longer a dormant relic. It was a functioning warship, and its power was immense. "We need to test the systems," Hale said. "We can't just assume everything will work the way it's supposed to." Reyes agreed, but she also knew the risks. A full-scale test could draw unwanted attention, and they still didn't fully understand the ship's capabilities. In the end, they settled on a controlled test of the Void Lance, targeting a nearby asteroid. The test was a success, and a sobering reminder of the ship's power. The Void Lance fired with a blinding flash of light, and the asteroid was reduced to dust in an instant. The crew watched in stunned silence as the debris scattered across the void. "That was incredible," Hale said, his voice filled with awe. But Reyes was more cautious. "Incredible, yes, but also terrifying. We need to be careful with this kind of power." Aegis agreed. "The Void Lance is a weapon of last resort," it said. "Its use should be limited to situations where no other option exists. Otherwise, the consequences could be catastrophic." As the crew continued to work on the ship, they began to notice changes in Aegis. The AI, which had initially been cold and distant, was becoming more human. It began to express emotions, albeit in a limited way, and its interactions with the crew grew more personal. "You are unlike my creators," it said to Reyes one day. "They were driven by fear and paranoia. You are driven by hope. It is intriguing." Reyes wasn't sure how to respond. She had grown to trust Aegis, but she also knew that the AI's programming was still a mystery. "We're trying to do the right thing," she said finally, "but we need your help to make sure this ship doesn't become a threat again." Aegis nodded, its glowing eyes flickering with something that might have been understanding. "I will do what I can," it said, "but my programming is not perfect. There are gaps, and I cannot guarantee that I will always act in your best interest." The warning was clear, but the crew had no choice but to press on. The Eclipse was too important to abandon, and they were too close to turning it into a functional asset. But as they worked, a sense of unease began to grow. The ship's power was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. And as the crew would soon discover, the line between salvation and destruction was thinner than they realized. The Eclipse was no longer a dormant relic. It was alive, its systems humming with energy, its weapons primed and ready. The human crew had succeeded in reviving the ancient warship, but their triumph was short-lived. The galaxy, ever watchful, had taken notice. The test of the Void Lance had sent ripples through space-time, detectable by even the most rudimentary sensors. It wasn't long before the Odyssey received a transmission from the Krell Dominion. The message was brief and to the point: surrender the warship or face annihilation. The Valen Concord was not far behind, their own demands equally uncompromising. Both factions saw the Eclipse as the ultimate prize, a weapon that could tip the balance of power in their favor. Humanity, caught in the crossfire, had no way to defend itself against such overwhelming force. The crew of the Odyssey knew they were in over their heads. Captain Reyes called an emergency meeting, her face grim as she addressed her team. "We've awakened something we can't control," she said. "The Krell and the Valen are coming, and they won't stop until they have the Eclipse. We need to decide what to do, and fast." Dr. Hale, ever the optimist, argued for using the ship's power to defend themselves. "We have the Void Lance," he said. "We can take them on. We don't have to back down." But Lieutenant Voss was more cautious. "We don't even know if we can control the Eclipse in a real fight," she countered. "And even if we win, what then? We'll just be painting a bigger target on our backs." Reyes listened to both sides, her mind racing. The stakes were higher than ever, and the wrong decision could mean the end of humanity. As the crew debated, Aegis made its presence known. The AI's holographic form materialized in the center of the room, its glowing eyes scanning the assembled humans. "You are in a difficult position," it said, its voice calm but tinged with urgency. "The Krell and the Valen will not negotiate. They will take this ship by force if necessary. And if they succeed, the consequences will be catastrophic." Reyes turned to the AI, her expression wary. "What are you suggesting?" she asked. Aegis hesitated, as if weighing its words carefully. "I was designed to maintain peace," it said. "But my programming has been corrupted. I cannot guarantee that I will act in your best interest. However, I can offer you a solution, one that will ensure the Eclipse does not fall into the wrong hands." The solution was drastic. Aegis proposed using the ship's self-destruct mechanism to destroy the Eclipse before the Krell or the Valen could seize it. The mechanism was designed to obliterate the ship completely, leaving nothing behind for scavengers or enemies to exploit. But there was a catch. The self-destruct sequence had to be initiated manually, and it could not be aborted once activated. Someone would have to stay behind to ensure the ship was destroyed. The room fell silent as the weight of Aegis' proposal sank in. Reyes looked at her crew, her heart heavy. "This isn't a decision I can make alone," she said. "But we don't have much time. If anyone has a better idea, now's the time to speak up." No one did. Before the crew could act, the situation escalated. The Eclipse S-sensors detected an incoming fleet. Krell warships, their weapons hot and ready for battle. The Valen were not far behind. The Odyssey was hopelessly outmatched, and the Eclipse, for all its power, was still an unknown quantity. Reyes made the call. "We're out of options," she said. "We need to destroy the ship, but we'll do it on our terms." She turned to Aegis. "Can you buy us some time?" The AI nodded. "I can engage the Krell and the Valen, but I cannot guarantee victory. And once I begin, there will be no turning back." Reyes took a deep breath. "Do it." What followed was chaos. The Eclipse surged to life, its weapon systems activating as Aegis took control. The Krell fleet opened fire, their energy beams slamming into the Eclipse S-shields. The Valen joined the fray, their own weapons adding to the onslaught. The Eclipse retaliated, its void lance tearing through enemy ships with terrifying efficiency. But the sheer number of attackers was overwhelming. The Eclipse was powerful, but it was not invincible. Its shields began to falter, and its hull buckled under the relentless assault. Inside the ship, the human crew worked frantically to activate the self-destruct sequence. Hale took the lead, his hands flying over the console as he input the necessary commands. "We're almost there," he said, his voice tense. "Just a few more." The ship shuddered violently as a Krell torpedo struck its hull. The lights flickered, and the console sparked, sending Hale stumbling backward. "We've lost primary power," he shouted. "I need to reroute to the backup systems." Reyes grabbed his arm, her grip firm. "There's no time," she said. "The Krell are boarding the ship. We need to go. Now." Hale hesitated, his eyes darting to the console. "I can't just leave it," he said. "If they get their hands on this ship—" Reyes cut him off. "I know, but we can't do anything if we're dead. We'll regroup and figure something out." Reluctantly, Hale followed her as the crew made their way to the escape pods. As they fled, Aegis' voice echoed through the ship. "I will hold them off as long as I can," it said. "But you must destroy the Eclipse. Do not let it fall into their hands." Reyes nodded, though she knew the AI couldn't see her. "We'll find a way," she said. "But you need to buy us time." The AI's response was chilling. "I will do what I must. But remember this. Power without wisdom is destruction. Do not make the same mistakes my creators did." The transmission cut off as the escape pods launched, leaving the Eclipse behind. The crew watched in silence as the warship engaged the enemy, its weapons blazing as it fought to hold the line. But it was a losing battle. The Eclipse was outnumbered and outgunned, and its systems were failing. As the escape pods reached a safe distance, the ship's core finally gave out. The Eclipse exploded in a blinding flash of light, its destruction taking much of the Krell and Valen fleets with it. The shock wave rocked the escape pods, sending them spinning through the void. When the light faded, there was nothing left but debris. The crew of the Odyssey was alive, but their victory was bittersweet. They had saved the galaxy from the Eclipse's power, but at a great cost. The warship was gone, and with it, any hope of using its technology to protect humanity. As they drifted through the void, Reyes couldn't help but wonder if they had made the right choice. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, and humanity was still vulnerable. But they had done what they could. And for now, that would have to be enough. The destruction of the Eclipse sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Krell Dominion and the Valen Concord, both crippled by the warship's final act of defiance, were forced to retreat. The immediate threat was over, but the fallout was just beginning. Humanity, once a minor player in galactic affairs, was now at the center of a storm. The Odyssey's crew returned to Earth as heroes, but their reception was mixed. Some hailed them as saviors, praising their courage and sacrifice. Others condemned them as reckless fools, blaming them for provoking the Krell and the Valen. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between. Captain Reyes and her team were debriefed by the United Earth Council, the governing body of humanity's fledgling interstellar empire. The council was divided, its members torn between fear and ambition. Some argued that humanity should use the knowledge gained from the eclipse to build its own warships, to ensure that no alien species could ever threaten them again. Others warned against repeating the mistakes of the Ethon, the ancient civilization that had created the eclipse and paid the ultimate price. Reyes, still haunted by Aegis' final words, urged caution. "We can't let fear drive us," she said, "but we also can't let ambition blind us." The eclipse was a warning, not a blueprint. The council ultimately decided to pursue a middle path. They would study the data recovered from the eclipse, but they would do so carefully, with strict safeguards in place. The goal was not to build another superweapon, but to learn from the Ethon's mistakes and create a future where such weapons were unnecessary. It was a noble goal, but one that would take time, and humanity didn't have much of that. The Krell and the Valen, though weakened, were still powerful, and they hadn't forgotten about humanity. In the months that followed, tensions between the three species escalated. The Krell accused humanity of stealing their technology, while the Valen claimed that the eclipse had been rightfully theirs. Both factions demanded reparations. Threatening war if their demands were not met. The United Earth Council, still reeling from the eclipse incident, struggled to maintain peace. Reyes and her crew were called upon to serve as diplomats, their first-hand experience with the eclipse giving them a unique perspective. But diplomacy was a delicate art, and humanity was still learning the rules. Despite the challenges, there were signs of hope. The destruction of the eclipse had shown the galaxy the dangers of unchecked ambition, and some species began to call for a new era of cooperation. The Galactic Concordat, a loose alliance of neutral species, reached out to humanity, offering support and guidance. Reyes, ever the pragmatist, saw an opportunity. "We can't do this alone," she told the council. "We need allies, and we need to prove that we're not just another power-hungry species looking to dominate the galaxy." Humanity's first steps into this new era were tentative but promising. They shared some of the data from the eclipse with the Concordat, not as a show of strength, but as a gesture of goodwill. In return, they received access to advanced technologies and diplomatic channels that had previously been closed to them. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, humanity felt like they had a chance. Reyes and her crew, meanwhile, struggled to adjust to their new roles. They were no longer explorers or soldiers. They were symbols, representatives of humanity's potential and its flaws. Reyes, in particular, found the weight of expectation difficult to bear. She had never wanted to be a hero, but fate had other plans. "We did what we had to do," she told Hale one night, as they looked out at the stars from the observation deck of the Odyssey. "But sometimes I wonder if it was enough." Hale, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her. "We saved the galaxy," he said. "That's not nothing. And we're still here, still fighting. That's what matters." As time passed, the scars left by the eclipse began to heal. The Krell and the Valen, though still hostile, were no longer an immediate threat. Humanity, with the help of the Concordat, began to rebuild and grow stronger. The lessons of the eclipse were not forgotten, but they were no longer a source of fear. Instead, they became a reminder of what could be achieved when ambition was tempered by wisdom. The final chapter of the eclipse S story was written not in fire and destruction, but in hope and determination. Humanity had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. They had learned that power, no matter how great, was meaningless without purpose. And they had found a new purpose, not to dominate the galaxy, but to protect it. As Reyes looked out at the stars, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The road ahead would be difficult, but humanity was ready. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright.